rock stars, Eric Andreas, your guitar sage here, and today I'm going to show you a dozen plus ways to sound more like Eddie Van Halen. What he plays, how he plays it, guitar amps, effects, pickups, the whole 9 yards. Stick around, this is going to be fun. All right, lovers of Eddie Van Halen, this is by far one of the guitar players that everybody has on their top 5 list, I would say. If you're watching this video, you're probably one of them. This is the guy that I grew up with, and listening to all of this frenetic energy coming through the speakers via Eddie Van Halen is what changed the world for guitar, right? So we're going to be talking about the bits and pieces today. Let's drill down into it right away. So Eddie Van Halen, as you know, was part of a 3-piece band, and at least in regards to the section, right? And as far as the musical section, right? There was bass, drums, and guitar, and that's it. So Eddie was... It was important for him, just like on all 3-piece bands, it was really important for him to be able to fill in the sound, which is much of what we're going to be talking about today, is how he came up with his sound. Has much to do with the fact that he was the only guitar player in the band that played, unless you're considering Ice Cream Man or something like that. He was really the only guitar player in the band, at least in the earlier days, before Sammy Hagar. So he needed to fill this space in, which is a lot of his sound, where we have these long reverb, decays, delay, flangers, phasers, that sort of thing, okay? But let's start off with basically talking about what he did, like what he actually played, because no matter what, I'm going to be showing you, 12 plus things today here. No matter what, even if you know all of these bits and pieces, you're not going to sound like Eddie, because Eddie sounds like Eddie, right? He'll even say it. But it's going to get you closer to that sound, okay? So first off, when Eddie played, he did a lot of tremolo picking, right? So tremolo picking, of course, is just that alternate picking up and down, right? It makes it sound just absolutely blazingly fast, and it is, at least as far as the picking, but your fretting hand doesn't have to be picking that fast. But that's just one of the sounds that Eddie brought to the table. Another classic sound, of course, is his use of the blues scale. So many of you know that Eddie was a big lover of Eric Clapton and a lot of other players, but Eric Clapton was one of his guitar heroes, and so probably why he brought the blues to the table here, and just like a lot of electric players did, the blues just sound great with rock. Probably Eddie's number one thing that he was known for is two-hand tapping. So one of the things that made Eddie's two-hand tapping parts that he would play different than other players is he would almost always start with the highest note first. Okay, there's many different ways that one can tap, right? You could start from the lowest note, or you could start at the middle note, or you could start at the top note like Eddie did. He would tap that note first and then whatever followed, usually the lowest note after that. Like that sort of thing. Okay, and that was by design because he could jump from string to string and always have a first note there, and he's always obviously going to start with a hammer on because you could do that with the right hand. So something to think about if you're trying to cop that sound, his phrasing almost always started with that top note. Another thing that Eddie was known for is his whammy bar antics. Now, In order for Eddie to be able to do these antics like he does on the whammy bar, he needed to have a system set up to where he could really dive bomb. And if you've ever played guitars with tremolo vibrato systems, what you'll find is that most of them, you can't do these huge dive bombs unless you're using a Floyd Rose, which is part of Eddie's sound, is that Floyd Rose sound. Now this is a Graph Tech, but essentially it's set up just like an old school Floyd Rose, in that you can truly dive bomb with it. I mean, enough to where the strings flap on the neck. And you know, if you were using a Bigsby or a Maestro or some of the classic, even the Fender tremolos, you're really not going to get that sort of play out of it like you would a Floyd Rose. The other thing about a Floyd Rose is that most players, including Eddie, would have it floating. And what that means is that it's not blocked, okay? So a lot of players like Clapton will block his tremolo system. And what that means is it's going to change the tone of the guitar a little bit. Every little bit counts, right? So what that means is you can't pull back on the Floyd Rose or on the tremolo system and have it go up in pitch. In this case here, I can pull up on it just like I could dive. And that's also going to affect the sound. It's going to make it a little bit more warbly. I mean, there's all different bits and pieces that it will actually bring to the table, but it does change the sound of the instrument as opposed to having it blocked. Okay, it's not going to have the same sustain, but you can do some different things with it that you might not normally do with a fixed tremolo system. It's known as a floating tremolo system, and that is another part of Eddie's sound in regards to the guitars. So speaking of guitars, in regards to what Eddie played, he didn't just play the Frankenstrat. A lot of people feel that because they see him playing that in a lot of videos, and it was an iconic guitar, of course, and it became the guitar that he played the most. But he played Steinbergers later on. He played 335s. He played Les Paul Juniors. He played Les Pauls. He was known to play lots of different guitars. I've even seen him with Stratocasters. So Eddie used whatever was needed for particular songs. Especially in the studio, you'll find that he used different guitars. But when playing live, a lot of times he'd use that Frankenstrat. Well, supposedly, the Frankenstrat is actually the humbucker pickup that's in that guitar was from a 335, a Gibson 335, not known as a very gainy type of guitar, not like you would think that Eddie might play. So when they actually dissected his guitar and his tone and what have you, and they were going to replicate Eddie's sound, which has been done several times now by several companies, they were really surprised to find that particular pickup didn't have a lot of gain. It didn't have a lot of output, which is what we would associate with the sound of Eddie Van Halen, a real overdriven sound, but in fact it's really not. So much of his sound came, as we'll be talking about a little bit later here, in regards to his amps. So as far as getting that Eddie sound, a humbucker pickup is just absolutely needed, but it doesn't have to be a super high gain pickup. It just needs to be a humbucker pickup. You know, humbucker, of course, being the two together here, as opposed to a single coil like what's in a Stratocaster. It's not going to have the same output and the same tone that you're going to find in a humbucker pickup. Eddie also played his guitars down a half step, usually. Okay, so the Beat It solo that you've heard here was done in D sharp or E flat, and a lot of other stuff that Eddie did was also down a half step. Now you could say that was because he wanted to have that sound, right? Or you could say that's because he was trying to save Lee Roth's voice or Hagar or whoever. But really the guitar sounds different when we tune it down a half step. It has a little bit of a different sound to it. This, of course, is a subjective matter. Some people will say it doesn't matter at all, but I love the sound of a guitar that's tuned down a half step. Anything more than that, it starts sounding very detuned. But half step low, the guitar seems to come alive, in my opinion. And a lot of people will agree with this as well. Stevie Ray Vaughan was a big fan of tuning down a half step as well. So yet another thing to make his sound like Eddie. Now, in regards to Eddie's amplifiers, obviously over the years, Eddie has created his own amps. Several companies have worked with him in regards to this, and he's created his own amps. However, these were all based off of the classic sounds that we were so used to from the late 70s and the early 80s. And the sound in regards to his amplifier is basically a plexi sound. It's a Marshall plexi. Now, with that being said, Eddie loved to tinker. He was known as the tone chaser, and he always liked to tinker with his stuff. One of the things that he did is he what we call variact or variac'd his Marshall. And I forgot how the story goes, but basically there's a variable AC unit that you can purchase that will literally allow you to draw different currents, okay? And when you do this to an amplifier, not only does it blow tubes very quickly because you're pushing the amp really hard, but it creates a beautiful sound, one known as the Brown sound. That's what Eddie called it, is the Brown sound. But technically, what would happen is he had this device that would, he's drawing current from the wall, just like we normally would for our amp. You plug it in. But it would go into this variable AC unit and had a big knob on it. And what he would do is he would turn this thing down, okay, to where basically the amp was drawing less power. A lot of people think that he was drawing more power from the wall into the amplifier, but that's not the case. It was less power. And what happened is it would really create the tubes to really get hot and overdrive the sound more. Okay, so by lowering the AC. So if you want to bust through a bunch of tubes and possibly break amplifiers and what have you, this is a great thing to do. Otherwise, there are folks that have come up with other ways of doing this at this point. A lot of emulators and that sort of thing. Now, the sounds that you're hearing me play through have all been Kemper sounds, okay? Kemper profiling amp. A lot of folks swear by these. I'm one of them. I have tons of tube amps and all of the analog gear and have played through all that stuff for years, and I still have much of it and love it. I have tube amplifiers and I love them. But this is remarkable at being able to come up with these sounds. But if you're really trying to go that old school way to variac, a nice plexi, Marshall plexi, is the way you're going to get that sound from the amplifier. In regards to Eddie's effects, I can think of 6 effects off the top of my head that he used quite often, and some of them are going to be more transparent than others. Things like a noise gate, an EQ, okay? Those are ones that are going to be a little bit more transparent, or a little bit, you're not going to know that they're on, if you will, okay? He used a 6-band EQ. Now, you don't have to go run out and get a 6-band EQ unless you're going to set it up just like Eddie, through the same guitar, through the same fingers, through the same amp, everything else. I say that because I don't want you to have to go purchase equipment and then you get it and you still don't have that Eddie sound that you're looking for, okay? This worked for Eddie for his specific setup, and he would use a 6-band EQ to just tweak the sound a little bit. An EQ basically allows you to attenuate or volume up, volume down on certain frequencies. So instead of having one volume knob, you basically have 6 for a 6-band EQ, 12 for a 12-band EQ. And you're able to pull in different frequencies or turn up different frequencies to curtail your sound the way you want to. Eddie also used a gate. A gate is basically a device that only allows so much sound in once it hits beyond a certain threshold and then doesn't let anything else in. So for instance, this right now is gated. If I touch the guitar, you hear it, it's nice and loud, okay? But if I didn't have the gate on, you'd hear a little bit of that amp sound or the overdrive pedals, that sort of thing. It just keeps things nice and clean. There's a myriad of different people that make gates, but Eddie was a big fan of MXR products, and he used a smart gate from MXR. He also used their 6-band graphic EQ. Another couple things that Eddie used that were less transparent or less obvious, or more obvious I should say, are reverb, delay, flanger, and phaser. He used the flanger and the phaser similarly, where there was not these real fast sweeps. He liked to use slower sweeps. I'll even give you the knob settings here in just a moment. But Eddie, again, at being in a 3-man band, had to fill out that sound. And one of the ways he filled out that sound was using lots of reverb. So you can hear from that example that when we're playing here, got a lot of reverb there and some delay. Okay. Okay, so having some nice reverb there, you don't want it to go too long, and the way to do this is just listen to the record and just attenuate it the way that it should sound, right? Just keep tweaking that reverb, those reverb knobs, both the mix and the feedback to get it just right. And this is, you can only do this by ear, okay? Okay, now when we're talking about delay, he typically didn't use a lot of delay. I mean, it was there, right? You can hear it there, a lot of slap back, or a little bit longer than a slap back, but not many generations, not a lot of feedback in regards to what feedback is in regards to delay is how many times you hear it. Unless you're talking about Cathedral or some other songs where he specifically was using the delay, like Eruption or what have you, where he's using lots of delay in order to get that sound. It was typically only a little bit of delay that he would use, but you could hear it audibly in his playing. He was also known to use a phaser and a flanger, okay? In Ain't Talking About Love, right, we got this sound. And that is a flanger. A lot of folks think that that's a phaser, but that specific song is a flanger, and you're going to find that those two sounds, the way he uses them, are somewhat interchangeable. They, because just the way he uses them. Uses a flanger, uses a phaser, different songs, but nonetheless, both MXRs. Now, in regards to the Phase 90, which is the actual pedal that Eddie used for his phasing, he would set that at, he said, a 9 to 10. So if you're looking at the dial, moving it to the 9 or 10, there's only one knob on that thing, if you remember. There's a switch and there's a knob. So turning that to like a 9 or a 10, if you're talking about the clock, right? It's in the 9 or 10 area. That's where you set it and forget it, okay? Now, talking about the flanger, he would say, okay, so the flanger, and I have not owned this particular pedal, but the MXR flanger has 4 knobs. The 3 on the left he would set between 11 and 11:30, and the knob on the far right, which is the regeneration, he would just crank all the way up. Set it and forget it. So if you want those tones that Eddie comes up with in regards to the phaser and in regards to the flanger, that is exactly what he did. Okay, so that covers the reverb, that covers the delay, covers the flanger, covers the mixer, the smart gate, which is basically just cleaning up the sound, and the 6-band graphic EQ. Now, friends, before we go here, you got to understand these are all bits and pieces that are going to get you closer. But if you're a big Eddie fan, listen to me, if you're a big Eddie fan and you've yet to learn his guitar licks and his songs, I would highly advise you to learn much of that stuff first before you go running out, breaking the bank and buying a lot of this stuff. Because what happens with folks is they'll watch a video like this, they'll go buy the gear, they come back home, and voila, they still don't sound like Eddie, okay, or Stevie Ray Vaughan or whoever else. So save yourself lots and lots of money. Get the basic job done with overdrive, some basic phaser or flanger, and a guitar with a humbucker pickup, even if you're using an HSS Strat or something like that where you can't dive bomb or something like that. You're going to get the job done. Okay, from there, learn the licks that Eddie played and learn them the way that he played them. Bar none, if you do that, you are going to be getting 90% of Eddie's sound. The rest of this stuff that I talked about today is going to be the other 10%. But you really, truly want to make sure that you have those licks down, because all day long you could be playing Stevie Ray Vaughan licks or your own licks through all this equipment, through all these bits and pieces, spend $100,000 on original Eddie equipment, right? And you're still not going to sound like Eddie unless you're playing the licks the way that Eddie played it. You can do that. Just listen and listen and listen. Watch videos like this. Watch some of the Van Halen videos that I've done here. And friends, you're going to be good to go. Let me know how I helped you. What did I miss? I know I've missed something. There's a million things that go into someone's sound, so leave those comments below, my friends. We're a community here. We're all here to help each other. So leave those comments below. I know I missed something. Please do that and help out the community. You've got information that I don't have. I'm sure you do, all right? Thumbs up, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm here to help you. If you're new to guitar, I want to help you. If you're not new to guitar, I want to help you. I have a free course. I've got a free ebook. Both of these are chock full of amazing things. All sorts of stuff that Eddie used, all sorts of stuff that all guitar players have used. So, free ebooks at YourGuitarSage.com. Just been brand spanking new, redone, loaded with lots of amazing stuff in it. The free course, YourGuitarSage.com/30. The link for that will be inside the description of this video. Friends, as always, be kind to all beings. Do the right thing always and practice your guitar. I'll see you in the next video.